I'm thankful and highly grateful to the organizers of this event and giving me opportunity to participate and deliberate upon the issues relating to the legislation. First of all, being the legislative draftsman, my focus on the will be on the procedure and the instrument, how it is converted into the legislation and the process during the steps where the legislation can be used during the process of the legislation where the technology can be used for the smooth functioning and efficiency of the things. First of all, I would like to invite the attention of the participants to the legislative system of the Pakistan. Supreme legislative body of the Pakistan is the parliament, consisting of two houses. One is the Senate and the other is the National Assembly. Senate is the upper house. All legislative proposals can be initiated except money bill, budget, or other financial aspects that cannot be originated in the Senate. It can only be originated in the National Assembly. National Assembly, which is commonly known as the lower house, all legislative proposals, including money bills, can also be initiated in the National Assembly. Procedure for the legislation, it will give us a glimpse of the issues where we can use the technology to more efficacy and more speedy disposal of the things. Introduction of the bill in either house, first step. And in this step, the bill is introduced either in the Senate or in the National Assembly. The reference to the standing committee, if the bill is admitted, then it is referred to the concerned standing committees of each house. Deliberations on the committee, the main basic deliberations, which as per as my experience in the legislative drafting and during the service or in the parliament, I consider is the main crux of the deliberations from all the political parties is before the committee. In the committee, all the representatives of the political parties are present. Being the public representatives, they used to deliberate and they focus on the issues for the public welfare. So the basic legislative process and the basic brainstorming which we can said has ever been used in the committee business. After the committee prepares its reports on the bills, either in the favor of the bill or against the bill. If fifth step is if passed by the house in which it is originated, then that report, the committee, when the committee reach to a conclusion, it prepares the report and that report is presented before the house. The house decides either to agree with the report or not. Usually in the cases when the bill is passed by the standing committee, these reports are also usually passed by the house. If passed by the house in which it is originated, it stands referred to the other house. Same procedure of the committee stages as well as deliberation before the committee are to be taken into consideration and to be followed by the other house. If passed by the both houses, it is referred to the president for the assent. If not passed by the other house, it is referred to the joint sitting of the parliament. Decision of the joint sitting is final. This is the quick review of the whole procedure of the legislation to be adopted by the National Assembly or by the Parliament of the modes of the legislation. I'm now coming to the next point. Modes of the legislation. Legislation is basically of two types with respect to its origination before the House. First of all, legislation can be either by the government bill. Government by mean of government bill, it is the introduction of the bill by the ministry. Government makes a policy, concerned minister or the ministry introduce the legislative proposal before the House or the National Assembly or the Senate, then it is processed as it was previously prescribed. Similarly, the private members also have the prerogative to move any amendment or any proposal before the House for the effectiveness and smooth running of the legislative business. So that is known as the private members bill, and that is also introduced before the introduction of bill. Quick review of that government bill by the concerned, that is usually introduced by the concerned minister. Similarly, private member bill that is can be introduced by any member. Approval of the cabinet is the pre-qualification for introduction of a bill. If the cabinet approves that proposal, then that proposal is produced before the house for further legislation. Similarly, in case of the private member bill, 10 days notice is necessary for introduction of the private member bill. The grant of leave by the house, if leave is granted to the house, granted by the house to a bill introduced by the government, then it is referred to the standing committee. Similarly, there are the chances for the private member bill that leave is not granted. If the minister or the other government MP stands up and or the parliamentary secretary on behalf of the government can oppose the bill, and on the opposition of that person, the bill stand killed over there, and it will not be referred to the standing committee. If the leave is granted to the private member bill, then it is referred to the standing committee. Procedures before the standing committee usually is consisting of following 4-5 steps. First of all, the concerned ministry is asked to submit its comments upon on the legislative proposals. Either the ministry support it or oppose it, or and secondly, the concerned member, in case of the private member bill, member is called before the committee to justify his amendment. Similarly, in case of the government bill, the concerned minister used to appear before the committee and brief the committee about the necessity of the legislative proposal. Arguments of the mover on in both cases, either by the government bill or the private member, are placed before the committee. Decision of the committee is the final on the bill, and then in accordance with the decision, a proper report is prepared, and that report is placed before the house, and then the house has the power to decide either to agree with the report or not. The main slide, coming to the point of the COVID-19 epidemic, the virtual meetings, there was before COVID-19, there was no virtual meeting. No, there was even no concept of virtual meetings in the National Assembly of the Pakistan. When it started, the epidemic or COVID-19, then the new technology was considered to be adopted in 2020. There were 43 meetings in which various members from their constituencies participated in the National Assembly Standing Committees meeting for deliberations and for their concerns to be placed before the committee. Similarly, the ratio increased in 2021. It goes to 148 meetings. Initially, it was 43, but it jumped to 148 meetings in 2021 due to the use of the technology and by adoption and acclimatization of these technologies. Now, the other thing is that at the same time, when we are using the technology during discussions and deliberations before the standing committees, but unfortunately, no virtual session of the National Assembly was held during COVID pandemic. Now, if we are coming to the point, number of bills passed by the National Assembly during the COVID pandemic in 2019, 13 bills were passed by the National Assembly. In 2020, when the COVID was at its peak, 34 bills were passed, and similarly, when in 2021, 51 bills were passed. The ratio is gradually going on high side. The reason is that adoption of the modern techniques and technologies for the use of the reason we adopted and followed the virtual sessions during our committee meetings, and the output of the committee when increased. Similarly, it added to the legislative business. Number of ordinance is basically a short-term temporary legislation which is usually adopted in emergency situations, and when the legislation is not possible in the parliament, then the president announced special orders for that. So in coming to the point, in 2019, ordinances, number of ordinances were four, whereas in 2020 it was 31. Again, it decreased in 2021. If we go to the ratio of that, we can clearly see that in 2000, the green portion of the graph is showing the number of bills passed by the National Assembly and comparison of the ordinances passed by the passed by the government. In 2019, only 13 bills were passed, whereas 4 ordinances were promulgated. Similarly, 31 ordinances were promulgated in 2020, but at the same time, 34 bills were passed. Now, if we came to 2021, it is on the much more higher side. than the previous years. This is no doubt due to the use of latest technologies and techniques during our committee presentations. Use of the digital technology. Currently, the National Assembly is having its own website, which is prescribing various things and listed in the slide. For the quick review of our official website, I have given a link over here. This is the National Assembly of the Pakistan official website. If we go to the first, it gives brief introduction, various number of speakers who have served as, and similarly research wing or on-job trainings or power facilitation, public complaints, rules and information, other laws related to that. The next tab is regarding to the history, various events on the parliamentary building, secretaries, leader of opposition, foreign members, and coming to the point of legislative business. Legislative business shows all the bills passed by the National Assembly or by the other house of the assembly, all the bills category wise, it is prescribing the number of bills introduced by the private members, number of bills introduced by the government, even the ordinances laid before the houses are also prescribed over here. It is also prescribing the full detail about members and their constituencies numbers, committees, various committees constituted by the National Assembly and their functions. Even it also provides us the meeting notices available on the official websites and media center and so on and so forth. Now coming back to the presentation. The only legislation relating to the COVID-19 which we had passed was the COVID-19 Prevention of Hoarding Act. But unfortunately, the said bill was passed by the National Assembly and was not passed by the Senate. It does not prescribe the proper legislative procedures or the techniques to be used during the legislative process, but it only prohibits the hoarding and smooth availability of the various facilities during the daily life to the general public. Conclusion. Coming to the conclusion, from the brief and the quick summary of the above procedure of the legislation before the parliament, a number of legislative instruments passed by the National Assembly in the last 3 years, it is clear that the legislation is increasing even during the pandemic. The reason behind that is nothing else than the use of the modern technology. I hope if the National Assembly session is also shifted to the virtual sessions or the latest technology, then it may also add substantially to the legislative business of the National Assembly. Thank you very much.